Hi and welcome. I'm Robin Forster with Feel So Alive, and this is Feel So Alive Informed. And I'll be looking off to the side to look at my notes because I want to make sure that we go through the whole program so you don't miss anything, because we have a pretty exceptional speaker that I want to share with you today. Oh, and if you're a first-time person here, which would be great, watching us live, if you would put a 1 in the chat. I'm hoping that the chat is working. Always learning something new. But if you would put a 1 in the chat so we know that it's your first time here. And if you're watching us on the replay, awesome! We're glad that you found a time to watch our program and listen to our speaker. So today is a little bit different. The goal of this program, or the point, is that I know that it's really hard for us as small business people to get all the information that we need. For example, I'm in health and wellness, so I'm really curious about the body, and I have some chronic issues, so I'm always looking for more information. And I realized that I was not the only one, right? So normally this program, and let's go ahead and flip over there. I think I've gotten ahead of myself a little bit, which is not surprising. So our guest speaker today, and this is a little unusual. Usually I just have one. Usually I have a healer and I also have a business person speaking. And then at the end of their 10 minutes, they usually share some tips, things that we can take away and use right away in our lives. But this time, what happened is that Ashley has managed to pull both her healing arts and her corporate background together into one package. So we spent the whole time chatting, and she has some wonderful gifts to share. So I just wanted to let you know it's going to be a little bit different, and I'll tell you more about that in just a second. So how the program normally runs, so next time the program will be running, our first speaker is about 10 minutes. Then we usually have a hosted health tip, and our second speaker is another 10 minutes. That's usually the business person, and then our upcoming dates and contact information. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that easily. And I'm also learning about making sure that you have access to the speaker's information too. So you can always go to our YouTube station to see that. And also it should be on Facebook, but I will double check. There we go. I was wondering, I'm using this way cool Stream Deck, and I was wondering why nothing was happening as I was pushing the button, but it did. So before we begin, I know that the world is in a lot of pain, and this is Earth Day. So to give back to, and it can be whatever is true for you, whether it's a blessing or a prayer or a white light or whatever it is that you do, I would like to see all of us just take 30 seconds, and I've got a timer that'll be running on the screen, of silence, so that we can kind of give back to all the people who are in pain, to our poor planet that needs a whole lot of love and attention. And this being Earth Day, it's a really good idea. So let's go ahead and get the countdown timer going for just 30 seconds. You can lower your eyes. Unless you're driving and listening to this, then please be safe. That is the most important thing. And I wanted to let you know that I pre-record all of the speakers, and part of that is for technical issues, because this is the year that should have been over, and it's not. We're still in it, so what could go wrong probably will 2 or 3 times. So I'm trying to cut down on technical issues. So that's why I pre-record our interviews, and it also makes it a lot easier for the speakers because we can do this at a time that's convenient for them, not just a time that is the slot that I have chosen for this program. So that's kind of what's going on with that. And Ashley is fascinating and also very, very enjoyable. And so I think what we'll do is just go ahead and go right into her video, because we do talk a little bit about who she is and where she's coming from. Okay, excellent. We are recording. Hi, my name is Robin Forster with Feel So Alive, and I will be looking off to the side at my notes, so if you're wondering what's going on with my eyes. And I would like to welcome all of you who are watching live or are watching on the replay. And today we're doing things a little bit different, and if you've been following me for a while, you know I have a tendency to try new things. Today my guest is Ashley Barnes, and Ashley, would you like to say hello?
Hello everyone.
Excellent, thanks. And as many of you know, we usually have a healer come on and share for 10 minutes, and then we also have a business person come on and share for 10 minutes, and then they share some tips or techniques, some healing exercises that we can do. Well, today we're wrapping all of that up into one guest speaker, and that's what I'm really excited about today. So let me tell you a little bit about Ashley, and then you'll see why we're going to do it this way. And so we're also going to run a little bit longer, just to give you a heads up. Okay, so Ashley's bio, Ashley Barnes, MSHROD, are the initials behind her name, and I'm sure that you will tell us about that later, right? Okay. She is a coach, a healer, a poet, an author, a speaker, and an intuitive leadership strategist for heart-centered women leaders who are physically and emotionally exhausted from giving too much to everyone else and not enough to themselves. And does that sound like anybody who is listening and watching? Exactly. After 20 years of trying to diminish her own deep sensitivity and compassion and nearly burning herself out, Ashley has learned how to flourish while also honoring her natural gifts and to bring this wisdom and experience to the women that she serves. She uses both energetic and practical tools, along with the healing power of words, to help women heal their overwhelm so they can prevent burnout and have an impact for those they serve without depleting themselves. And when she's not working, Ashley enjoys time with her soulmate of over 15 years, their 4 children, 1 granddaughter, and a multitude of pets. That sounds entertaining. With 4 kids, I can just kind of guess. Her happy place is by the water, especially Siesta Key Beach, where she feels at home and inspired. So Ashley, we are really excited that you are here, and are we ready to get started?
Let's do it. I'm excited to be here too.
Oh, good. Okay, so our first question, because I know that the folks watching don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So I'll start with the letters. That is a master's in science in human resources and organizational development. So that has been my day job career for something like 14 years now. So that involves training and development and leadership development, competency-based development for employees and leaders in a corporate environment. So I've actually ended up just kind of happenstance been in healthcare for the whole time of that, but there's certainly those kind of roles all over the place. Now my passion work, not that I don't love developing people, because I do, and that's certainly an aspect, but my coaching and healing and all of that piece started when I thought I would become a holistic health coach. I was really into wellness. I'm still into wellness, but I don't necessarily want to teach anybody how to eat. So I kind of shifted into healing. I learned energy healing, actually at one of my corporate jobs, believe it or not, and got very, very interested in that mental, emotional, spiritual side of wellness and that holistic well-being from the energetic perspective. And over time, I have just incorporated all of those pieces into one coaching program that incorporates both the coaching and the healing, and like I said, the writing, which is really as much for me as anybody else. And then the little bit, the leadership and development piece, that's a piece of me as well. So it all becomes a bundle.
Excellent. Okay, that's a lot. Trying to get my head around all of that. I think it's so inspiring though, because so many people have this piece that's their passion and this piece that's their passion. Then they've got their day, gig here, and they're trying to pull it together. And I have one friend who's trying to create an umbrella so she can get all of her healing practices. And that was one of the things that really intrigued me when we first were chatting, was that it seems like you've been able to pull all of it together into one package.
Yes. And that's a pretty recent development. I have spent a lot of time feeling very disjointed, like I'm this piece and I'm this piece and I'm this piece, and not really seeing how the pieces all came together. It's been in the last year when I went, hey, these are all interrelated, and I can help people in the corporate world or in business just as easily with these energetic pieces as I can anybody else. Now, it doesn't mean I can't help other people too, but that connection between how does this impact me as a corporate worker for most of my life, and how has this been helpful to get me through that. I think for a lot of really heart-centered kind of people, soul-focused people, it's hard to be in that corporate type environment. Business is hard on your heart, right? Sometimes it's tough. And so I think I kind of come from that perspective of how can I help. Business isn't going away, so how can people thrive in that environment without burning out?
That is such a good point, because I think we all know that women especially hit the glass ceiling, and they're doing the thing at home and they're doing the thing at work, and there's kids and there's this and there's that, and then a lot of women are trying to continue their education so they can climb the corporate ladder, and yeah, it's pretty crazy making.
Yeah, just a bit. And that's really, once all that piles on, that's how we get to that place of feeling so overwhelmed. And a lot of that, like you mentioned, that's external. It's for ourselves, but it's doing things externally, which really can drain you if you don't have a practice to balance that out.
That is such a good point, and especially in this day and age, trying to figure out how we can bring in the juice that we need. And I keep thinking about when you're on an airplane, they always say you put your air mask on first,
Exactly.
take care of yourself. Yeah, and it's funny how that metaphor has turned out. It's huge,
Yes.
and so yeah, this is pretty exciting. As you can tell, I'm jazzed. It's like, ooh, we need to get into this. Okay, so you've told us a little bit, but do you want to say a little bit more about how you got drawn into this line of work, this healing arts, and how it's benefited others?
Sure. Like I said, almost everything I've done, I fell backwards into. I didn't necessarily plan to be in corporate training. I didn't plan to be a coach. I really kind of got burned out and thought I need to do something different, and fell into coaching. And then I was in another job when they introduced a healing therapies program at work, and I thought, well, this sounds really interesting. It's definitely not corporate, so let's try this out. And I remember just sitting in the intro session they did, thinking, am I at work? Is this really real? I mean, there were probably 75 people who came to that first session, and they picked, I think, 15 of us maybe to be in the healing therapies program. And that's how I got introduced to the energy healing. I had no idea about it at all, believe it or not, and just so touched me. And like I said, I was really interested in wellness, but what really came through for me around the healing piece is that so much of the time we think all of our problems are these things, these barriers in life, but a lot of it just is lodged blocks in our energy system. And if we clear that, it's impossible that these other things go away naturally, that they're really not the problem. They're a symptom of the underlying problem. So if we clear that energy piece, that really goes a long way to fixing a lot of things that we look for external solutions around. And once I got into that, I was like, well, why would I ever focus on food when I could just clear your energy block? Now, don't get me wrong, we still need to eat well, but a lot of times that comes a little more natural when we feel better in our physical body, because we've lifted some of those weights that we pick up over time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, there's so many different modalities, and like you said, to clear the energy blocks, then you feel better so that you can focus on eating better, because it's not this huge, overwhelming weight. And that's a really good point. And I'm in the food world and in the food supplement world, and very much believe in those. But
Mm-hmm.
right, it goes hand in hand. Yeah, yeah, which is exciting that you got turned on to that, and especially in the corporate world. I love
I
that.
know, right? I know. I would never have dreamed that. And that actually led me to go out and study more. And then I found someone who taught Reiki. So I went through the Reiki process as well as the internal corporate process too. So I kind of got both. So now I've blended those modalities as well. So it's just been really fascinating.
Exactly, which is how we got so involved because we were chatting with just a regular one-to-one. We met each other on LinkedIn through another workshop I think we both attended, and we just kind of started chatting, and then it was like, oh, this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do something with this information. We have to share your knowledge.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so you were talking a little bit about healing energy, and you were talking a little bit about Reiki, and I know you have some other tools in your tool belt. But one of the things you and I talked about was an energy ball exercise.
Yeah.
Would you like to share a little bit about that? Because that sounds pretty fascinating.
Sure, I'd love to. So, one of the ways I explain energy to folks when I do classes, because energy you can't see, right? We're talking about this invisible part of us that affects us, but it doesn't, but we can't see it. And it's really hard sometimes to like imagine how to utilize that if you can't see something. So, I always say, and you can follow along with me, if you take your hands and put them face like this. Now you might want to shut your eyes, but you don't have to. But just visualize between your hands a ball of light. And as you visualize that, just pay attention to how it feels. Sometimes for some folks it feels like tingly or like it's pulsating. Sometimes it feels warm. It might feel different. Do you feel it?
Yeah, it feels warm. It's a very gentle warm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. Gentle. And that's what I love about energy work. And so you can kind of play with this idea of the ball. You can move your hands around and see if it feels different when you move your hands closer together and further away. And once, if you're, not everybody can feel the ball initially, so kind of playing with that. But if you're feeling it, then you can also do the same activity, but you can do it kind of up your arm um, or over your torso. This is where your chakras would be. So a lot of our energy movement happens in those major energy centers. So in your main part of your body, you're going to perhaps notice a different feeling than you would on your arm. And you might notice different sensations. So could be kind of tingly, could be again warm, cold. There's no right or wrong answer.
Okay, well now I got stuck on the
Okay.
transition from the ball
Yep.
to up my arm because
Okay.
the ball I'm enjoying, and when I kind of play with it in different directions like you were suggesting,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I get some tingling, some energy off my fingertips,
Yep.
and sometimes not. So I have this ball. So how do I transition from the ball to up my arm?
So just take your hands a wet part, but kind of still holding that intention of that energy. And then just shift. Go, just take one hand, whichever, maybe your right hand if you're right handed, but, and just hold it a few inches above your arm. And the same kind of idea, rather than imagining the ball between your hands, just imagine now you're feeling the energy, the ball, but that is the energy of your body.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and then like I said, maybe try other places. We're talking right now, so you might feel something interesting at your throat or in the heart space. Um, if you have aches or pains, you have chronic issues or something in certain parts of your body, that will likely feel different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like pain to me often feels tingly, almost like pins and needles, like when your hand goes to sleep.
Uh-huh.
Or it can feel kind of heavier. Maybe your right hand if you're right-handed.
Okay, if you all are wondering, yes, I had an internet problem. No, I have no idea what happened, but the live stopped all by itself. So I have restarted it and checked, and it looks like it is working on Facebook also. So we'll go ahead. I've taken the video back a little bit so we didn't miss anything of what Ashley was talking about. And sorry about that. It is what it is.
Um, and just hold it a few inches above your arm. And the same kind of idea, rather than imagining the ball between your hands, just imagine now you're feeling the energy, the ball, but that is the energy of your body.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And then, like I said, maybe try other places. We're talking right now, so you might feel something interesting at your throat or in the heart space. Um, if you have aches or pains, you have chronic issues or something in certain parts of your body, that will likely feel different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like pain to me often feels tingly, almost like pins and needles, like when your hand goes to sleep.
Uh-huh.
Or it can feel kind of heavy. That's really hard to explain, but it's a practice, right? So if you get used to what this is what my arm feels like, it feels pretty smooth when I go through it, but then I go over a place that feels different. You just sort of notice the distinctions between the two.
It's interesting when I go over my hand where my watch is, that changes everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because watch is not alive. It still has its own energy field, but it's not the same as a human body that's alive. You could try this with your dog or cat too, if they'll sit still for you, because they will feel different. They have that energy too, but they will feel different perhaps than your husband or your children, or get some willing participants to just scan their body. You can kind of just do a whole body scan starting at the head, and just this is actually how we practiced it when before we started learning techniques. We would just practice scanning and just noticing the differences and how energy feels in different parts of the body.
Excellent. Okay, so in terms of somebody wanting to do something with what we're talking about now, it sounds like, to do a little recap, that they could start with the energy ball,
Yep.
see how that feels, see how they do, because again, you were saying this is practice and no one's going to hit it out of the ballpark every single time, so it's okay.
Yeah.
And then transition from there just by kind of just letting it go, but holding the intention.
Yes.
And I've been learning lots more about intention. That's an
Mm-hmm.
important thing. And then being able to take it on the body
Yep.
and or do a body scan to notice if there's like prickly things happening
Mm-hmm.
someplace, or if it's kind of sluggish, or just kind of whatever it is that's happening, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And it's not so different. Have you ever done one of those body scans, mental body scans, where you start mentally at your head and you're just going from your head to your toe and you're noticing, you're not doing anything, but you're just noticing how you feel, where you're holding tension or different things? It's the same idea. That's more of a conscious awareness of it, whereas this is more of an energetic awareness. But you could compare the two, because if you're consciously aware of, I've got a lot on my mind today, then you could do it with your hands and notice how the energy of a really frantic head feels different than perhaps another part that is not frantic. Arms and legs are usually pretty, they don't have the same energy thing going on unless you have pain or some kind of chronic issue.
Interesting. When I
Yeah.
was thinking when you were talking about the body scan, I periodically practice melt, which is a physical thing, and Sue Hitzman is the one who came up with it, and she does this great body scan where she walks you through it so you can feel it. Because sometimes, at least for me, it's hard to get a new technique unless somebody like you're doing, like you're walking us through this. We can talk about it, and then it's like, oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who's watching this and is wondering, so how do you do a body scan from your head? Go check out Melt on either YouTube or Facebook, and Sue does a great. I think she does about a 10-minute of just kind of figuring out what's going on. Yeah, yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you had some other toys. I shouldn't call them toys, but I kind of see them as toys.
Yeah.
Before we were talking about a head to heart exercise.
Yes. Yeah. That's actually a nice segue, because it's kind of similar to the body scan. But one of the things that comes up a lot for those of us who are very busy and very overwhelmed, and we stay in our headspace a lot, right? So we get that really, for me, because I've been practiced getting attuned to this, is it's a very buzzy, kind of chaotic feeling up here. Not Could be a headache, but if it goes too far, but really it starts to get overwhelming. And what we want to do is when we're, especially if we're trying to make decisions, we want to just find a sense of balance. We want to get, better, more grounded into just our, and mindful in our life, right? And present. We want to get out of our head and down into the heart space, because the heart space is more like that intuitive place where we kind of have a better inner knowing. Our head does a great job of thinking for us, right? We have to think sometimes, but thinking isn't always the way we get to the answer. Sometimes it's more of that intuitive piece. So if you find yourself in that headspace, you can just, it's really simple. We talked about intention. So put some focus around your head. And what I actually encourage folks to do is to think of something that, bring to mind something that they're kind of thinking about that's causing this chaos. So, a decision you're trying to make or something you're ruminating on, bring that into your awareness, and then notice how your head feels when you bring that up. And like I said, for me, it's buzzy, tingly, kind of chaotic feeling. It could be different for you. And then once you've brought your awareness to that feeling, consciously bring your awareness out of your head and just bring it to your heart. And for a lot of folks, if it's new for you, I encourage you to put your hand on your heart, so you remind yourself, you're coming down here, bringing the awareness from here to here, and notice how that feels different. The heart usually feels a little calmer, a little more gentle and serene. And then bring your awareness to bring that situation back to mind, but bring it to mind with the focus in the heart. And you're not necessarily looking for an answer yet, although if you practice this enough, you might find that once you get out of there and down to the heart, the answer comes more quickly. But if nothing else, it gives you that sense of calmness, of coming out of the chaos space and down into the healing, loving space of the heart.
Yeah, that really made a difference, because as you were talking, I was, going with my head, and my head was getting fuller and more sluggish and heading towards painful. And I don't usually get headaches. I mean, that's like once every 20 years I get a headache. And so it was kind of like, uh-oh, okay, so what's going on? But it was nice to be able to pull it down to my heart, because that relieved some of the pressure, which was nice. And like you're saying, my heart is so much calmer, and it's steady because it beats very regularly, which I appreciate.
Right. That's a very good thing.
It is. It's the whole intention. But what a difference. And what I'm thinking is like, and I'm not, I was going to say, oh, when you're in line at the grocery store, but that's kind of changed. So you're 6 feet apart. But still, what a good time, or for me, a lot of times it's the post office, because there was always a line at the post office. And what a good time just to kind of, put this together, pull it down, and then I'm guessing, and so maybe you can explain this a little bit better. What I've started doing lately is taking whatever those yucky thoughts are, or stress, or whatever, and letting my cells release them kind of as gray, cloudy, ash kind of stuff. And so now, does that fit with what we're doing?
It does. I think it's a variation on this theme. There's so many different ways to do this process depending on how you work well. For me, I don't do this process as much as I'm a writer. So for me, I purge through writing. But what you're talking about, a visualization where you visualize all the dark clouds coming out and coming out, releasing out of your body, that's a perfect example of the same basic idea. You're getting out of your head, out of that thinking space, and into that more being space.
Nice. Okay, good to know I'm on the right direction, because I just started doing that, and it's like, this feels good. I hope it's okay.
Hey, if it feels good and you get good results out of it, I think that's the important part. And it's simple.
Yeah, and it's simple. Yeah, exactly. Which is the key, because I think so many of us are just so overwhelmed. And we were talking before how this has been such a high trauma. I mean, we're all traumatized all the time. And do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know you have another exercise that we were thinking about that I think is just way too cool. But do you want to talk a little bit about the trauma and the overwhelm, and especially for women, and especially for those of us who are aging and trying to make sense out of a world that's upside down.
Right, sure. Yeah, I think that's like we were saying earlier, this year is unique in the sense that it's it's a collective trauma, it's an individual trauma, it's huge, massive change, which is always hard on people anyways. We're kind of we like our equilibrium, right? Even people who are really flexible, we kind of like some level of I know what's coming next or have some sense of that, and we haven't had that in a year, and we're still not quite there. So that adds a different kind of trauma and overwhelm to folks. Plus, for so many of us as women, we're home now. We have the home, I don't want to call it burdens, but we have all the things at home plus our work. And now we're at home working with them. Our dogs and our children are in the room with us while we're trying to do all these things. And we just have extra challenges we didn't have before. And I think, going back to the energy piece, what I always say is that, from childhood on, we have these little big T traumas and little T traumas, little things that just kind of stick in there that we don't process out. And then big things that perhaps come into our energy field and we don't process that out entirely. We don't always have the tools. Most of us were not taught these things as children. And that's why when we get older, we start to notice all of these effects we have. And then add to it a pandemic to, that just adds a new layer. So with the energy work, what we do is peel back those layers a little bit at a time to try to give some relief from all of that past stuff and give us that kind of a clean slate almost to go forward, and not carry so much. And hopefully we learn some processes and some tools, kind of like what we were just talking, to start actually letting it go so we don't keep taking it in and repeating those patterns.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
Well, watching the time, because you have
Yeah.
been very gracious to give us so much of your time, and I appreciate that. And I know that you're in a different time zone, so it's a little different energy. You're at the end of your day, and I'm just in the mid afternoon. You're in Indiana, I'm in Oregon. We're at a little over 20 minutes, and so just to wrap up, I thought that the Reiki doll was way cool, but you may have another exercise that you want to share with us as kind of your parting gift.
Sure. Nope. The Reiki doll is great. She is here. And I was thinking in preparation for this, I really need a name for her. I do not have a name for her, unfortunately. So this might prompt me to think of that. But prior to the pandemic, I did everything in person. I met people in person. They came and we did all of our sessions together. And I had wanted to make it virtual because because energy works the way it does, you don't have to be in person. But I just had never pulled that pin until the pandemic made everything virtual. But I wanted something to kind of create focus for me as I work with somebody. So I got this off of Etsy. It is handmade by an artisan on Etsy. And these are, of course, each of the chakras. And I just use the doll as if I'm working with, when I'm working with a person, as if they're right here. So let's see, I use a pendulum, and as I work with somebody, I actually go through each of the chakras and check to see, how the function is. It spinning? Is it moving? Is energy moving? And if not, where is it blocked? I work just like I would work with a person. Start at the head, work all the way down, flip it over, cover the back, and that way I don't rush through anything. I put a lot of concentration and effort where somebody needs it, so they get exactly what they would get from me if we were in person. And I just love her. I just love her. She's one of my favorite tools that I have added to all. And I am not a big tool or prop person. I don't have any problem with it. It's just not my thing. But I do actually really enjoy this as a tool. And she's extra cute, I think.
I do too, but you brought out your pendulum, and we haven't talked about that. In the last 30 seconds or so, you want to tell us a little bit about how to use it and why?
Yeah, exactly. So I learned the pendulum as part of healing touch, and the idea was, like I said, we go through each of the chakras, and the pendulum will tell us you can do this with your hands, just like we practice, but the pendulum will do the same thing, where it will tell us if a chakra is open or not. So if you just okay, I only have so many hands, but if I hover my hand over the chakra, well, actually I could do it on myself. So like this is over my heart area, and the pendulum will swing depending on whether that chakra is open. So you can see it's hopefully you can tell it's spinning. And
Yeah.
that tells me that it is open. If it was not spinning, that would tell me there was some energy blockage there. Or if it spun in a different direction, it would basically tell me that there was some blockage, probably is a little more overactive. But basically, I'm looking for spin. And like I said, I do that at each one of the chakras to kind of just give me an overview of where the problems are, where the stuck places are for people energetically. Because each chakra kind of governs a different area of the body, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So it kind of tells me you might need grounding if your root chakra is closed, or if your heart chakra is closed, there's probably a lot of sadness, forgiveness, healing type things. It just gives me extra clues.
Excellent. Okay, which leads me to another question, even though I'm watching the clock. So the next question is, so could a person, if they wanted to work on themselves, could they, for example, get the Reiki doll and the pendulum and yet do it for themselves?
They could. And they really don't even need the doll to work on themselves. I have taught some classes in the past where we just go through some really simple self-healing techniques. You could just hover your hand, just like what I just did, where you hover your hand over your own chakra and use the pendulum on yourself. Not unlike the ball, it takes some practice. I think the one thing I love to use the pendulum because it really brings it into reality, makes it more tangible. But I will say sometimes it doesn't spin right away for everybody, and that can be frustrating. So if you try it, don't get frustrated.
Well, and I think that's with everything these days. You know, we all thought when it became 2021 that all the issues of 2020 would leave. And it's like, no, 2020 is still here. Things are still gollywampus, to use a very antique word.
I love that. That's a great word.
Yeah, and it's a clean, family friendly word, you know.
It is.
But Ashley, I'm looking at the time and I appreciate you giving us so much information. This has just been an absolute treat.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I probably could talk about this all day, so it's good that you were watching the clock.
Well, and I think I could too. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.
Wasn't that amazing? You may be kind of familiar with energy work or just starting to learn about alternatives. I really liked the energy ball that she did. I thought that was very cool. And I also appreciate what Ashley was talking about in terms of practicing. It's like I've been learning about intermittent fasting and how to be a coach for that. And they talk about intermittent fasting being a practice. And from what I'm hearing from Ashley, we're also talking about energy work and healing as being a practice. So with anything like learning how to run or playing a violin, it's going to take more than just 20 seconds to get good at it. So yeah, I'm thinking about that in terms of also me learning about how to do Facebook Lives and use Ecamm, which is the software that I'm using. So it's been fun learning and practicing and learning new things. And I want to thank you for attending, but before you go, I have one more slide I want to share with you. This program is brought to you by Feel So Alive and Feel So Alive Informed. That's my business, and we're all about health and wellness and protecting the planet, to put it really short and sweet. Our next two Feel So Alive Informed are going to be May 13th and May 27th. They're both at 1 o'clock Pacific time, and we'll go back to our format probably of about 10 minutes for a healer and then about 10 minutes for a professional person. And again, it's all about passing on, playing forward tips that will make it easier for you. And please feel free to share this program because we've had some fabulous speakers with some incredible skills. And I would like to make sure that they get, that the more people become aware of them and what they're doing, because it's pretty remarkable. And just going over my list to make sure that we're covering everything, please do go to YouTube and make sure that you click on subscribe and also on the bell so that you will get notified when we're going live again. And also on my Facebook page, which is also Feel So Alive. MKGP is abbreviation for marketing group. And thank you very much for your time.